Hello, everyone. This is Nicholas Ugero, and today I have the pleasure and honor of having James Corbett of the Report.com on my channel today. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, I really appreciate just the amount of information that you present and the way that you present it, treating your audience like adults and having them come to their own decisions and their own conclusions, and just being able to take in the information on their own. I think it's invaluable, and you and The Last American Vagabond and Whitney Webb, I think, are really the top tier in my opinion, and just the work you guys do is just impeccable, and it's very much needed in this day and age, and it's very much appreciated. So thank you so much for what you do and just taking the time to come on here. For people who aren't unfortunately aware of who you are, which I'm sure there's not that many, but if you want to just give a brief introduction of yourself, your website, and just the whole open source journalism mentality and why you have been striving towards that in your career.
Sure. Well, I'm James Corbett, and as you say, I'm at CorbettReport.com. The Corbett Report was a website that I started back in 2007, and initially it was just it was going to be a podcast, a weekly podcast, but it very quickly evolved into articles and videos and interviews and all sorts of other things. And now, 14 years later, I can scarcely believe it, but my videos and podcasts have been downloaded literally tens of millions of times by people all around the world. I can't imagine how I do this for a living, but I do this for a living. So that's I know this doesn't necessarily connect with everyone in the audience who's looking at this as something on the screen that they're imbibing. But for me, in my own lived experience, I see and understand the power of actually going out there and doing something rather than sitting on your hands and waiting for someone else to do it for you, because I did it and here I am. And now I am privileged enough to have an audience that I can speak to and that will support me in doing this work. So I'm very grateful for that. The founding ethos of the site, essentially, it really began with the research that I began doing in late 2006, where I started discovering all sorts of information via documentaries and then via deep dives into document archives themselves about all the kind of occluded information that we don't generally get taught in textbooks, in classrooms, or get taught through the media. It was something that I had to start digging out myself. And I'm sure probably a portion of your audience has probably had a similar experience going down the rabbit hole, as it were, and starting to discover, oh, this world isn't quite like I was taught it was. And for me, that involved, first and foremost, was 9/11 Truth. That was the first thing that really started me down that process, because I'd always had questions about various things and suspicions. I didn't believe Lee Harvey Oswald was a lone nut and other such things. But it was really when I started questioning 9/11, which for me was a bit of a mental hurdle, because at first, for the first 5 years of 9/11 aftermath, I thought it was absolutely ridiculous. Oh, I know there's conspiracies and things, but conspiracy theories about this, and it wasn't until I started looking at some of the facts for myself that I started to discover there was more, and that got the ball rolling. And pretty soon I was looking into the banking system itself and where does money actually come from, and that gets you going into other directions. And I think one of the final real big mental hurdles for me on the path towards starting the website, one of the last ones, was the climate change myth, which is an exceptionally powerful one. And for myself as well, how could all these scientists possibly be wrong? And one that I find that is still a sticking point for a lot of people who I think otherwise would be on board with my work, but they can't believe I'm such an idiot when it comes to that question. Anyway, I've done a lot of research on that over the years and had a lot of certainly had my my opinion changed on that and many other things. But the founding ethos of the site was essentially I'm glad you pointed that out, actually. Treating my audience like adults who can come to their own decisions. I certainly have my own opinions and my own way of looking at things, and I don't try to hide that, because I think the myth of journalistic objectivity is a myth that was constructed to give credence to the Walter Cronkites and other people of the world. They'll tell you exactly what's happening in the world, and they're objective, and they look at both sides of the story when the story actually has 15 different sides or something like that. Everything that you see presented in the media is a choice that is being made by editors of what to talk about and what not to talk about. And I make those choices too. So I certainly don't try to hide the fact that I come from a subjective space, but I try to treat the audience like adults, that yes, you can take up on board the information that I'm presenting and you can internalize it your own way, given your own personal experiences. And the way that I do that is by trying to reference everything that I cite. If I cite an article or a video or a document or something, I will put the link in so you can go directly to that particular document and check it for yourself. And I always exhort people to look back at the source documents, because that at the end of the day is what I'm attempting to really do, is compile research on a number of different subjects, and hopefully research that will be valuable for researchers. That I think is the first primary sort of target of my website. I like to think of it as, this is the website that I would like to be in existence if I wasn't the one making it. This is the kind of website I would like, because there is so much information there, and I hope it's a resource that people can use, and everything's available for free. That was another conscious decision that I made very early on. And I remember for me as well, when I was first encountering, for example, the work of Alex Jones and other people who were making use of the internet for what it is possible to do, is to get this information dispersed extremely widely to many people for free, instantaneously, anywhere around the world. It is a remarkable technology. And the amazing thing, as I have, again, demonstrated myself through my decade plus 14 years now of doing this, is that when you put everything out for free and then say, hey, if you like this, please support me and I can continue to do this. Well, actually, if people out there do appreciate your work, they will support you. And so far, that has worked for me anyway, until until the banking system starts cracking down on work like this, which is inevitably the next step in censorship. But that's basically the site, where it comes from, what I'm attempting to do. And as I always say, I'm not here trying to be the arbiter on a cloud telling people that, this is it, and this is the way the world is. This is my perspective on information, and I'm just trying to give information to people, and hopefully they can make something of it.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a very great description. I appreciate it. So if like the open source journalism aspect of it, I know that you've had it where you've done a video and you said, okay, I've done a little bit of a dive in here. This is like a good starting point. You guys can take the mantle from here and work on the comments and try to see what else you guys can figure out. What has been a really good success in that arena? Like you just dropping a subject with some delving into it, and then the viewers coming together. What was a really good successful one that you experienced?
Right. So the idea here, open source journalism, I guess there's a number of different ways to define that, but the way I define it is like an open source program code. You have the source is open. That doesn't, I mean, I know people get hung up on all the different semantics, and does that mean that it's free, and does that mean that anyone can contribute, and all this sort of stuff? All it means is, here's all the source documents that I used. Now go assemble it for yourself in any way you like. And I've tried to create a community around that concept, some sort of not open source, but crowdsource journalism, which is a orthogonal idea. It's not exactly the same. It can be open source while not having a community based around it. In this case, I have tried to cultivate a community, and successful at times in places. It is like herding cats on the internet. I mean, you can tell people, I think would be a good line of research, but people don't necessarily want to go down that line or pursue it or have anything interesting to say about it. But one that sticks out in my mind was the open source investigation we did into Malaysian Airlines flight 310, was it? Not the one that went missing, but the one that got shot down over Ukraine. Right? Remember that several years ago. And I remember that as being a particularly successful open source investigation, because I said to people, okay, look, we're going to go and just leave anything that you think is interesting in the comments, and we'll see if we can assemble it. And people responded, and there were people translating certain things that was only being presented, for example, in Russian media and things like that, things that I could not possibly have done by myself. So that was a particularly successful example. Other ones I've tried to do that have been more or less successful, like, for example, back during the Ebola scare several years ago, there was the open source investigation on that, and there was some useful information put in there, but not as much as that previous iteration of it. And then 2020, shortly before I did the Bill Gates documentary, Who is Bill Gates, I put out a Bill Gates open source investigation and asked people to leave comments. I didn't get a lot of useful material from that. So it does seem like a crapshoot. It's sort of what the audience is interested in, what they have knowledge about. So I don't, if I knew the secret formula to creating a successful open source investigation, I would trust me, I'd be using it a lot more. But sometimes it can be successful, sometimes not.
Perfect. Yeah, that's awesome. That's cool. You had some solid examples of people being able to kind of collaborate and really help out, especially the translations. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Definitely helps out.
absolutely.
And when you were talking about like not having anything behind a paywall and having it kind of free and open for people, and if they want to donate, they have the ability to do that. I think that's excellent. And I remember years ago you had an interview with Newsbud when they first came out. What was the other gentleman's name? Ben Shapiro, I think his name is, or who am I thinking of? I'm not
Newsbud?
sure.
I don't know.
Newsbud was the who was the whistleblower?
Sibel Edmonds,
Sibel Edmonds. Yeah, it
Peter
was
B. Collins. There was some other people in
yeah,
as well.
it was like a three-way interview that you were doing, and
Mm.
you were even in during the interview you were showing like were showing that your you weren't what was it? You were not agreeing with the fact that they had some stuff behind a paywall, and you said it like in the interview up front, and
Mm.
I agreed. I was like, yeah, it really shouldn't just be where it's behind a paywall and that's the only way you'll be able to access it. Like I understand like a timed little exclusive thing, but yeah, just the fact that you were outspoken in that sense, I remember that, and that was years ago, and that really stood out to me. And so I think yeah, just the whole mindset of it and just having it where it's kind of donation based only, I think that's excellent, especially with the quality of the work you do. It's just really great to see that. And in terms of the Renegade University, I know you just had a class that you did. If you don't mind going into some detail about what it was about, how long it was for, how many people were participating in it, and like the reception that you had.
So this was a course for Renegade University. It's at renegadeuniversity.com, and you can sign up for it and take that course if you want, even today. It was recorded over 3 weeks, three different sessions. The first three Monday nights in November, and it was on mass media, a history. So it was a very, very wide ranging history course, essentially, from the Gutenberg revolution, the printing, movable type printing press revolution, starting in the 1440s, 1450s, moving up to today. And as you can imagine, with that breadth of sort of time scale, it was a lot of information. So it ended up, I think, being something like seven hours of information, something like 2.5 hours per lecture. And for me personally, I am glad. It's like so much of the work that I do. I'm glad that other people get something out of it, but I get a lot out of it as well. And this was a particularly good example of that, because this is a subject, the mass media, where it comes from, how it functions, how it shapes our understanding of the world, is something that I've thought, obviously, a lot about, being in the media, the alternative media, for the past 14 years. This is something that I really have put a lot of thought into, and have done a lot of reading and research over the years on that subject. But it was in compiling the course and putting all of the pieces of that puzzle together and laying it out that I myself was sort of overwhelmed anew by just how important and central an issue this is, and one that we tend not to think about, because, like the fish swimming in water, what's water? We're swimming in mediated reality, so for so much of our daily lives, and we to even distance ourselves to the point where our great grandfathers or something would look at a conversation like the one that you and I are having right now, and it would be mind-blowing magic. How is this happening? What is going on? You're talking to someone who's on the other side of the world. What is happening? This is something that we should not just take for granted. And so I tried to lay out not just the history. The first session of that course was on the printing press revolution, and bringing it up into to the cusp of the electronic media age. And then the second part was on the sort of rise of the radio/TV paradigm of the 20th century. The third part was bringing it up to the present with the online revolution, and then where's it going from here? And that part, to me, is the most bone chilling, because there, like so many other revolutions that happen and that do take hold and do flower in some way, it is because it is genuinely useful, and it does express some sort of something that is innate in humanity. We do want to communicate and reach out and have this network of connection with other people. Of course, that's what language itself is about. It's an expression of our quest to connect with other people. And so, hey, here's this technology that will make it easier for you to connect with other people. But that's almost like the lure that gets you into what can become a trap. They don't call it the World Wide Web for nothing. We are becoming increasingly entrapped in this mediated universe. And now they're about to start pulling the old switcheroo where real life, media life, what's the difference? Let's mix them together. It's a metaverse and everything will be connected. Just strap on the goggles and live your entire life in this mediated reality. And again, I know that still might sound sci-fi-ish to some people in the crowd, but I think we're all starting to see where this is going. And I think if we don't deeply question what is happening right now, we're not going to have any hope of retaining our core humanity as we go through this transition that's happening. And I wish I had some sort of pat, easy answer to that. You know, where do we go with this? How do we put the brakes on this? Are there brakes to be applied? I mean, it's like the people back in the television age saying, well, everyone should just turn off their TV. Well, that doesn't quite work so well. People don't just all decide to turn off their TV. And that's not likely to happen with the metaverse. And I know I'm not going to strap on the VR goggles, but is it really aimed at me? It's aimed at my children and my children's children. It is going to be that media soup that they get marinated and stewed in their entire lives, and they will take it for granted. Well, of course. What's the big deal? It's just goggles, you old geezer. Come on. So I know where this is going, and I think once you lay out the history and you show how mechanisms of control are fostered through this technology, you start to get a better sense of just how central, just how pivotal this issue is in our lives.
Oh yeah, definitely. The whole metaverse, the VR headsets. Me personally, I want to kind of cover this later on when we talk about like trauma and stuff, but just video gaming was always a coping mechanism for me as a child. Like my parents were fighting all the time, so for me to be able to escape and stuff, and then low self-confidence, whatever else. So for me, that's always been a part of my life, was just going to the gaming to escape depression, whatever else. So I can, especially nowadays with the way that COVID is, and then the kids that are, I'm so glad I'm not under 18 when this all happened. I'm very, very grateful that was the case, because otherwise I would have fallen right for this stuff. So it's really scary how quickly these kids are getting absorbed into this kind of mindset. But yeah, like the depression and the anxiety and the way the world is, like this is a golden ticket for them to just escape. So it's yeah, it's not like you said, it's not aimed at you, you old geezer. It's aimed at your children. So, and they're not going to have that wisdom and that foresight or that being able to look back before all this started and really have that understanding. So yeah, it's very, very scary the way that's going. But yeah, with the class. So how many people were in attendance for that?
So I think there was 83 or something that signed
Wow.
up during the course itself. I know some more have signed up since then. I don't have the total at this point, but there will be more in the future because it will be up there in perpetuity, so people can sign up at any time.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Was there any way for people to give you any sort of feedback on it? Is there like a comments or an email or a specific email for you, or?
People can always contact me through the contact form on my site, and I did have several people do that. In fact, the course was a little bit interactive in that, of course, there was Q&A time after each session. And for example, during the Q&A time on one of the sessions, somebody brought up a book called Bowling Alone by Robert Putnam, which I'd heard of, but I hadn't read. So in the intervening week between that course and the next one, I read the book and we talked about it the following week. So there was that kind of feedback, and also I had feedback from people. The one that really stuck out to me was one person who said that, you know, I kind of knew about this, I kind of have thought about this, but it's never really struck me again just how important this is and how much this is a part of our lives. And that was for me is the most satisfying sort of feedback to get on this, because I I understand from the outside perspective how this might not sound like that interesting a topic, but when you start to get into it, it is crazy. It is fascinating. There's some, just from an historical perspective, there's some interesting moments and things that have taken place. But on when you look at the broader sort of philosophical issue of what's going on here, I think it's undeniably central, crucial to what kind of humanity will survive this great reset, great transition, whatever it is that we're being put through right now.
Yeah, those are excellent points, and yeah, like even for me, when I heard about it, I was like, I'm kind of curious where it would all lead, like that kind of information, because like you say, like people could think like, it's kind of maybe that's kind of dry. Like, what's the real relevance to it? But yeah, if you see the build up and the huge progression, it becomes a lot clearer, and can definitely help in terms of decision making that you make in the future. So that's very, very important. So you can kind of see those pitfalls or where the direction they're taking us. So obviously you can make better decisions. That's excellent. And I know that you had an interview with Derek Bros not too long ago, probably a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, and you were discussing a book that you've been in the process of writing for a very long time, and I thought it was really interesting. And so, if you want to give a brief description of the book and how long you've been chugging along on that, and how it's kind of changed, and then just overall, if you want to just give a description, because I know you're busy as hell. You're doing like you did the class, you've been doing documentaries, you're just getting research together, you're doing the book, you got a family, you're doing all those other things. So just if you want to give some people some insight on how you manage your time, how you stay consistent in terms of content creation, like whether you use calendars, list of goals, whatever it may be, but just any sort of tips that you personally do in your own life to stay organized and consistent.
Sure. All right. So on the book, yeah, this is something that my longtime listeners will be familiar with because I'm just looking it up now myself on my Odysee.com page, which people who don't know, my YouTube channel was scrubbed from the face of the internet earlier this year. It is still preserved on something called altcensored.com, which is this place that preserves YouTube videos that are slated for deletion, that have been deleted. Again, I'm sort of sketchy on the details, but anyway, they preserved all of my channel. But there's another site called Odysee.com, which is based on the library LBRY network that has preserved my channel as well. And I'm just looking it up on there. So yes, on October 9th of 2009, I put out a trailer for my forthcoming book, Reportage Essays on the New World Order. 2009, it's now 2021. Okay, I'm taking my time with this. Maybe I shouldn't have announced it quite so soon. Anyway, the idea behind this originally and still was this is a series of essays on various aspects of what I talk about, because one thing that I don't know if I'm proud of, but at any rate is something to note, is that I have, I think, a pretty wide range of topics and interests. I mean, if you've been watching me for 14 years, you probably know a lot of them by now. But I do like to explore lots of different avenues: science and history and philosophy and current events and all sorts of things, and try to connect various threads. So I wanted something. I was trying at that time, even back in 2009, I was trying to think, well, I want to be a writer. I've always wanted to be a writer. I do take pride in my writing. So I want to put something in book form, but what could I write about? And this was a particular problem for me because even going back to my academic training, I got to the master's level, and on the leaving interview for my master's course, they were asking, "Are you planning on going forward with a PhD?" And I was like, "No, absolutely not. There's nothing I could imagine that I would want to sit there and study to the minutest detail for 7 years or whatever it takes to produce a thesis. And so I'm the best read person in the entire world on whatever onomatopoeia in the works of Faulkner or something, just the tiniest minutia of detail. That's not the way my mind works. I like to try, I'm always looking at different things and trying to expand. So in order to encapsulate that in a book, I thought, well, I'll have a series of essays, and each essay will deal with a different topic along the sorts of things that I talked about. Now, as I say, that was originally planned, conceived, and announced in 2009. It's now 2021. Believe it or not, I actually have been working on that book over these intervening 12 years. It's just that it, of course, continues to evolve. And at some point, I I have to cut off and say it's done. But it's always been evolving, as even my own thoughts on things change. So at this point, I can't remember exactly what the number is, but something like 14, 15 essays, something like that. Most of which people have not read before, a few of which are adapted from my editorials that I've done over the years that are available on my site. But Uh, I mean, I've made the decision. It is coming out. I swear it is coming out. I'm almost done, actually. Almost. But I made the decision. I'm actually going to leave in some of the essays that I wrote several years ago. Some of them that maybe even a few of them that I wrote in 2009, or the early iterations of them I wrote in 2009. I'm going to leave them in even if they don't necessarily in all aspects reflect my current standing on various issues, because I want to show some of that development as well. And I think when you put it in all together in the book form and people can read through, I think you'll get a sense of development as well as, I mean, which is important to me because I don't think coming to an understanding of the world is ever a static thing, that this is it and for all time and eternity. No, my views evolve over time, given new information and things. So anyway, I've been working on it for 12 years. It'll be coming out. I swear it'll be coming out, and people can read it then. Having said that, time management. That's a good question. I try to think about how it is, rather than just trying to lecture people about what you should do. What do I do to manage my time? That is a good question. I obviously use a calendar to remind me of things like this interview that we're doing right now and that sort of thing, and to keep my schedule straight. Um, but beyond that, I don't really have time management tools. I don't use alarms or, like, oh, by this time, you 1 hour for emails and then 1 hour on research and then 1 hour writing, or I don't do that kind of thing. Because I'm generally pretty self-motivated and I know what needs to be done and how to get there. So I don't need a lot of corralling or outside forces with that. So I don't have a lot of practical advice to offer on those sorts of things. But I can say if you are deeply motivated to do something, well, I can't even say that. I was going to say then you'll find a way to do it. But no, some people procrastinate. I know. And that's just the sort of human nature. I don't know I don't know how to overcome that. I'm sorry I don't have any tips or tricks for that. But just on the general scheme of things, I mean, I'm a stay-at-home father who has family that I'm with as I'm doing work, and I mean there's 18 things going on at once generally. I just happen to be the kind of person who can deal with that fairly well. But I realize that's not going to work for most people. So I'm really trying to think if there's any specific tool that I use for time management, but there really isn't. And let me berate myself, because it's not like it's all perfect and all works out. No, 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 no. Sometimes I do prioritize, and that means the things I don't prioritize get swept to the side. And one example of that is the fact that, as people know, when they become members of my site, there is the option to make a one-time contribution for a minimum of $12, and that will give you a 1-year membership to the site. And after 1 year, I will send a reminder, if you don't renew by the end of the month, your subscription will expire, and then your subscription will expire. Unfortunately, that isn't an automatic process. I don't have it set up with a plugin on my back end so that it just automatically does that. I have to manually do it. And so it has gotten to the point, up until a couple of months ago, I was something like 5 years behind on getting people cleared out and getting everyone up to speed. And okay, your account is expired. So I have been doing that diligently for the past couple of months, 1 hour or so a day, although it's not rigid, defined time, but every day just sitting down and, okay, I got to go back and do this. And I've been working my way up, and now I'm into 2020. The people whose memberships actually expired last year, I'm finally starting to get emails to them. So I fall behind on things like that, but and other things. One thing that I've definitely learned over the years is not to announce projects beforehand, precisely because of the reportage type of thing. Or I remember when I was doing the Century of Enslavement documentary, I kept telling people it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And then I'd get all these emails. When's it coming? You've been talking about it so long. So I've learned not to do that. But I have an internal sense of deadlines for things and when something needs to be on time. I often will do, for example, anniversary type of things, like on the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I is when I released the World War I conspiracy, or on 9/11, most years I have some sort of 9/11 type documentary or something like that. So there are certain inbuilt deadlines along those lines, but there are other times it's more open-ended, and I know that can be a weight because the World War I conspiracy documentary ends with a to be continued ... And I've been asked about that a lot over the years. What is it, 2 or 3 years now since 3 years? Has it been 3 years? Oh my, wow. Anyway, I've been asked about that a lot, and yeah, that is a continuing series. There's more to come, but you gotta wait. And I was gonna do it last year, but then last year turned into the craziest year of my entire life. So people will just have to wait for it. So anyway, I'm sorry. I don't think I answered your question with specific details, but that's just how it is. I don't have a lot of specific time management techniques or devices that I use. I just tend to self motivate.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's the answer I was looking for. Just your own personal take on it and how you do it. So yeah, I know because that's I've definitely heard that from you. Just the personal motivation and just knowing how things are and just having your own family. That definitely puts a fire under somebody having that family aspect for sure. I definitely am happy we still have some time because I would definitely want to get into this with you. I'm not sure how long ago it was. Maybe it was last year or early this year, but when you were on Vinny Eastwood's show with Mark Passio,
Mm.
you two are someone are people that I very much respect and I enjoy the work of. You are definitely an inspiration. Like when I watch your stuff, I actually get motivated to do stuff. Same with Mark Passio. When I watch his stuff, I actually get motivated to do stuff. And it was just great seeing you guys on there together. It was really nice to see. And so I just wanted to get your opinion on just the whole anarchy aspect in terms of, obviously, in my view, since there's no rulers and we're sovereign individuals, we have the same rights. So you have the same rights as I do, and there's nothing really. Obviously, there's no one that has more rights than us, other than, in my view, a creator. So I wanted to kind of see where your view was on that. Do you think that there is an objective truth? Do you think that there is some sort of higher power, some sort of higher creation, intelligent creation? What are your thoughts on like karma? Do you see that stuff as being similar? Just want to get your take on that.
Right. Well, I'm not a materialist. I think there is more to this universe than just physical matter. What that is, how it is ordered, and by who or what is well above my pay grade. And I I always think, why would anyone listen to me? I'm not a spiritual guru. I don't put myself on that pedestal, and I don't think other people should. So personally, I think there is a creator of something. This didn't just appear. There is some sort of creator, and what that is and how it operates, again, well beyond my pay grade. But that does imply certain things, as you say. I think it does, and this is the way this conversation has been grounded for the last 300-400 years of philosophical history, is that we are endowed by our creator with certain inalienable rights. And people can interpret that in any way they want. And I know there are atheists in the crowd who really do believe it is all just physical matter. Okay, well, then don't use the word creator if that gives you the heebie-jeebies. I don't know. But at any rate, it does imply that there is an inherent equality in our status as sovereign individual beings. And I know that even the word equality has become radioactive. Oh, equal rights. Oh, no, we're not. We're not equal. Some people are better than others, and blah blah blah. The conversation is just constantly undermined by unthoughtful dialogue, shall we say? But I think people understand what that means. It means that there is no special hat or badge or special person born to some special family that has an inherent right to rule over anyone else. And so what we decide to do to organize our society is a different thing entirely. And I'm a voluntarist, which I suppose, in a sense, I think of it as encapsulating any particular political persuasion or ideology or idea that you have, so long as that is engaged in voluntarily. So if you want to live in a liberal democracy, go for it. Yes, okay, fine. You absolutely can create those structures and participate in them, just so long as people are not bound to your system by virtue of being born in the geographical territory that you claim ownership of in some way. That is ludicrous nonsense. So my basic moral philosophy, which I think transfers into a political philosophy, is that any sort of relations and how those interrelations are managed between consenting adults is fine. Obviously, that brings in a million questions about, okay, well, consenting adults, so where's that line? You know, is it 18 years old, you suddenly become able to consent to political structures? And what about before that point? Did your parents have ownership over you? How, you know, are they custodians? What does that mean? What, can you liberate yourself from your parents? And you know, what about conflict? Because obviously different communities will have conflict over geographical areas and resources. Yeah, so that's where the sticky mess comes in. And again, I'm not going to presume to solve millennia of debate on those sorts of issues, but again, it's grounded in the moral, ethical principle that yes, we have to consent to whatever is taking place with us, and consent can be you're just participating, deciding to participate in a democratic system or whatever it is. Again, I'm totally fine with those decisions as long as you're not forcing other people to participate in those communities.
Yeah, exactly. Makes perfect sense. You can't be forcing anyone to do anything. Just like with taxes, you can't be forcing anyone to be charitable. That's not how it works. It's like with you, just exactly how you're doing it. You're doing a fantastic job. People see the value in it, and they're voluntarily giving you cash as a donation, and because they find value in it. And you're not twisting anyone's arm to do so. It's just people just seeing the inherent value in it, and so that's what it's all about. So do you think that there is an object? Because like I agree, there is a creator in my view. Do you think that right and wrong, there is an objective right and wrong, or do you think that it is subjective?
I think there is. There is clearly. I think that there is an inborn sense that we have, almost like a perceptual sense of morality, and I think that we do understand. Obviously, again, there are a million edge cases and various things where there's obviously a lot of arguments that happen, but there are certain things that are clearly wrong, and I think that everyone apprehends that, except potentially for psychopaths and other people who literally are incapable of perceiving. And that to me raises the possibility, and I'm just spitballing, what do I know, but the possibility that there is genuinely that uh, uh, corresponding to the idea that we are not just physical matter, and consciousness is not just something that is produced in the physical matter of our brain, so much as potentially consciousness is a thing that exists, that we are perceived through our brain, that is acting like a antenna receiving the consciousness signals or whatever that is. Um, Perhaps people with certain broken antennas, as it were, broken brains in a sense, cannot perceive other things that are perfectly perceptible to other people, so that there are people who cannot perceive that moral realm in the same way that we do, which raises its own ethical questions. Well, what if it was a case that, say, a psychopath is just someone born with some sort of brain defect or whatever it is that makes them incapable of understanding the moral realm of what we're living in? Then what do we do with them? Do we blame them for what they are, or do we lock them away forever? Or, you know, I mean, there's some genuine questions here, and I don't presume to be able to solve them in any sort of, you know, chit chat like this. But at any rate, I think there is a perceivable moral realm, and I think we do understand that. And there's just certain things that I think everyone would understand are beyond that realm. If somebody, I'd like to think, if somebody came across someone torturing a little child or something, uh, there's no context or something where you're going to go, oh, well, okay, I mean, wow, that's fine because this happened or something like that. I think we all understand that there's something wrong that we need to intercede in. Again, I could be wrong about that, but that's my belief.
Yeah, I definitely agree. For what Mark Passio said, I've watched a lot of his presentations, and just the way he's laid it out makes a lot of sense. The like, even if someone is in that subjective realm, they think that it is subjective. It's just based on our preferences. If you list off murder, assault, rape, theft, trespassing, coercion, and lying, I think 9 times out of 10, someone that thinks it's subjective would tend to agree that each one of those is a wrongdoing, that someone is in fact being violated in some form. whether it's their free will decision making or the ability to associate with who they want sexually or whatever. You're stealing somebody's ability to do something. So it's basically just the umbrella is just don't steal. And that's basically the whole underlying foundation of it, the non-aggression principle and then the self-defense principle.
Yeah.
And just using that in combination and using your
It's
free will
interesting
decision
though,
making
because
to
yeah,
do the
because
right thing.
I mean, it makes such obvious sense to me at this point, but that wasn't an understanding I've always had, or at least not seen with such clarity. And it's interesting that that isn't the case because I think, generally are not taught this. But something that did that for me was a video that I must have seen probably 2007-ish. It was, I don't know if it was explicitly associated with the Ron Paul presidential campaign at the time, but it was clearly swirling around in those circles and being passed around. And it was called The Philosophy of Liberty. And it was just a simple animation with just like stick figure drawings. Like it was just extremely simple, but it made that point very clearly that I own my life, my property, my time. And when you try to steal those things from me, you are committing an aggression that clearly is not morally acceptable. And it just laid it out so simply that it seemed absolutely obvious to me. And I think I've always had classical liberal, not liberal in the political sense, but classical liberal leanings all my life. It always made sense to me when I read Locke about, um, we have life, liberty, and property that you can't steal. That always made sense. Okay, yes, interact in the ways you're going to interact, just so long as you're not committing aggression against someone else in doing so. Seems like a basic baseline operating principle. And as I say, there's always the million questions and cases that pop up, but I don't think that underlines the basic rule for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And like we were saying, like just just we're all equal. So for instance, obviously two people on an island, if I steal from you, it's obviously a wrongdoing. Doesn't matter how many people there are after that, it's a wrong, it's a wrong. And so it's moral relativism versus objective morality. So people think that, oh, because like, what was it, last year in 2020 in Illinois, weed became legal to grow. You can have 5 plants now. Ooh, thank you so much for that. Well, too bad for them. I was already growing 2 years before that because I don't give a fuck. And it's just, you have no right to tell me what I can and can't do with a plant that's no different than anything else in my garden. So, but those years prior to it being legalized, people were messing with my plants. They were snapping them off, or they stole it, or they did whatever. Once it became legal, poof, nobody messed with it. Nobody touched it at all. Just, I just got new neighbors, I guess, or people just had a change in conscience or something. But yeah, it's just all of a sudden, some people wrote on a piece of paper, and now people are scared to touch my things because they're like, oh, now he has a right to do it. He's a good guy now. He's a law-abiding citizen. But guess what? I had like 20 plants outside today or this year. Like, I don't care what your arbitrary law says. I'm gonna grow whatever amount I want because I'm not doing anything wrong with it. I'm growing it organically too, so I'm not using pesticides. It's helping out the environment. It's you can eat the leaves. You can obviously smoke the bud or put it into other things, and you can boil the stems and drink that as a tincture. It's medicine. It's just ridiculous. There's obviously
show me the victim from growing a plant, right? Who are you victimizing in that? Where's the aggression?
And so that's just that's why we're in this, and that's why, going back to the natural law thing and objective morality, that's why we're in this mess, is because people have the mindset that these people have the justification to do what they're doing. And it's just that belief in false authority, which has gotten us to this state. And it's not where it's out of our control. It's just based on how many people in the world have this belief and how many people don't. And it's not the divide of left versus right, or people that are pro-vaccine or anti-vaccine. It's people that believe in authority, and then people that don't believe in authority. Like, I believe in a creator, and that's beyond us. That's something different. That's an actual authority I could see, not some flawed human being that's just as corruptible as I am. And it's just putting their faith in something that's really not historically been there for us. It's proven that they're not solving any root problems, as you've covered with the Green Revolution. Yeah, they really solved world hunger, right? It's been, what, 50 years since then, and we still believe that they have their best intentions. It's just ridiculous. Like, no wonder we're in this state that we're in, and it's all about the mindset. And I'd love to share this really quickly. right here, not this one, but Mark Passio made this really good slide, and it just talks about how our reality is built, and it's based the foundation is just available information. So, like you
I
said with
can't see
the
whatever you're sharing there.
oh, you cannot. Okay.
No.
Hmm. Okay, well, it's a set of boxes, and it talks about available information. So it's the knowledge or the lack thereof, and then the decision-making process, which is understanding or lack thereof, and then the human behavior, which is the wisdom or lack thereof. And so it's basically your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions. So if we have faulty information, whether it's coming from Google and we're just flat out trusting it, or whether it's just coming from CNBC or whatever. If we're just taking that in face value and we're not really critically thinking, we're going to have a false view of the world, have different foundational ideas of how this world functions. And then that changes our decision making, which is how we get a terrible result like we're experiencing. So basically, garbage in, garbage out. And
I think what we're experiencing is it is a fundamental problem, and it is not one with a simple solution.
yeah,
That once you get to a certain level of complexity in society, you simply cannot know everything that there is to know about everything that you need to know about on a daily basis. You have to delegate some of your authority and some of your knowledge and you have to delegate that to other people and trust, well, this person has studied this and so they know. But the question of how we do that is the fundamental question that is leading us into the crisis and is becoming quite explicit, obviously, over the last 2 years of generated crisis in that injunction to trust the experts, trust the science. It is precisely that injunction which is leading us into the type of tyranny that I'm not sure anyone really comprehended was right. We were right on the cusp of entering. Very few people, I think, comprehended the dire nature of our situation, and now we're at the point where the authorities that are controlling our mediated universe, i.e., big tech, are inserting themselves as the arbiters of what authorities can and cannot be trusted, can and cannot essentially speak. And that's just such an incredibly important topic that unfortunately there's very many people out there who would very much like to just say, okay, it's simple. We just trust the science and big tech will tell me what science is allowed to be trusted. And that's it. And there's their solution. And anyone who doesn't do that is a horrible, whatever, neo-fascist, blah, 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 whatever words they want to throw out. Unfortunately, that is an exceptionally comforting way of looking at the world for a lot of people. It's very easy. They have to just turn off their minds and just allow other people to speak for them. And anyone who doesn't go along with the crowd, they're the problem. It's easily identifiable. If you're not wearing the mask and taking the vaccines and doing everything you're told, then you are the problem. So unfortunately, I understand why it is such a compelling narrative, essentially, to give to the public. But this question of how do we delegate authority and to whom and under what circumstances, and how do we reserve our own right to say, no, I'm not going to take this authority's word for it. I'm going to take this person's word for it. I'm going to take my own word for it. How do we preserve that ability is, again, it's not a simple question, obviously. When you reach a level of complexity in human society where we have billions of people organized in various structures all over the world, this is going to be an incredibly difficult problem. But if we don't work it out, I think we understand where this road is leading us to, the type of biomedical tyranny that unfortunately it spells essentially the end of Homo sapiens, which I know sounds outlandish to people who have not really understood where this is going or looked into the documents.
there's absolutely no great convergence. I don't know what you're talking about. You're so hyperbolic.
Ding, ding, ding. Yes, that's definitely a good search term for people who are completely unfamiliar with this agenda and where it's heading. Great convergence might be a good place to start. Great Reset, of course, is the one that most people will probably have heard of by now, but Great Convergence is coming along in the wake of this Great Reset. And if people don't understand that and where this is going, I cannot stress this enough. We are facing the end of the human species as we've known it. And I really, the most frustrating thing for me in all of these 14 years that I've been doing this is that, if anything, I have not been confident enough in my own understanding and foresight in what's coming, because as it turns out, a lot of the things that I've been talking about for 14 years are coming true right now. And the very same people who decry the crazy conspiracy nuts who've been talking about this are now going, oh, it's here. But those guys are still crazy conspiracy nuts. Still, you should listen to us, who were demonstrably wrong about all of this. So that's unfortunate. So now that I genuinely know where certain factions of the power elite are attempting to take this agenda, I definitely feel it is my responsibility to make that as explicit as possible. We are looking at the end of the human species as we've known it, unless we divert this course that we're on right now. Again, there's no easy pat silver bullet solution to that. There's a million different things that we can be doing, though. And that's what I try to concentrate on with my Solutions Watch series every week, trying to look at different things that we can do in our own life to try to start taking back control and at least diverting the course that we're heading on, because we are heading towards the brick wall at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, and I know that you've stated before, like it's, like we should have been doing some of this, the stuff that we're doing now, we should have done 20 years ago. Like when we look back at it. And so, for when you were talking about solutions, I know I mentioned it off air, but for people that don't know, James Corbett did a video about guerrilla gardening, and it was one of his solution videos. And for me, back in 2017, I watched that. That was very inspirational for me. A lot of good information. Definitely gave me some concrete steps as to, or info onto why that action is so valuable and how it's such a big middle finger to the whole system itself. So luckily, I've been doing gardening for now 5 years. I did a lot of landscaping for a neighbor this year, got paid cash, thankfully, got a lot of information and knowledge, a lot of confidence. So I'm very lucky to be in this spot now where I have this information already, not where I'm just starting to learn how to do certain tasks or whatever to help my situation out. So yeah, I know it's at the top of the hour now, so I know that you've got to skedaddle, but I really appreciate you coming on, James. If there's if you want to just give out your link and your website and where people can find you and just anything upcoming that you got going on.
Yes, the place to go is corbettreport.com. I also post to different social medias, minds.com, library, Odysee, Bitchute. But the place to go is corbettreport.com. I'm not on Twitter or Facebook or anything else. And anyone on any of those platforms that is claiming to be me is not me. I note that there's a YouTube channel calling itself The Corbett Report. That isn't me. So at any rate, the only real place to actually really connect with me is corbettreport.com. And all I can say is stay tuned. I've got some big things coming up. At least one big thing to drop before the end of the year. And then some more stuff coming in the new year. So I hope people will stay tuned for that.
Awesome. I very much look forward to it. Thank you so much for taking the time, James. Seriously, it means a lot to me, and I very much appreciate it. I very much look up to you and what you're doing, and stay safe. Thank you so much for the work you do.
All right. Well, thank you for doing what you do, and keep at it.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Take care, everybody.